Hey guys, I'm Damashi the Chaotic, and this is my video review on the E-Spear type. I will also be going over my spear recommendations for Kefka, as well as different spear loadouts you can try for him. So, first thing I want to get out of the way is, when you are spearing a character, it's very important that you think about why you're spearing this character, and why you are giving them a particular spear. Hey, such and such character is my favorite, I'm going to give him a spear. Okay, that's nice. Why that spear in particular? And that's something you really need to think about, because a spear you could have given to someone could have been better on someone else. And another thing you need to take into account when you're spearing a character is spears are like gems. If you're not willing to go all in, don't go all in at all. Because a single spear is not going to make much of a difference. But a fully speared character can be a very big jump up in quality. So first up we have Yuffie. This spear for Kefka will be up all the time. 3 turns may not seem like a lot, but you need to think Kefka, when a wave starts with his EX plus realization, it starts the wave by inflicting Sneering Clown. So as soon as the fight starts, this is already active. Not only that, all of Kefka's skills inflict debuffs. His skill 1, his skill 2, his EX. I don't recall if his LD counts, because it doesn't inflict a debuff, it extends them. But if that's the case, again, this spear effect is never coming off. Next up we have Laguna. You don't want to give this spear not just to Kefka, but to anyone you plan on playing with Kefka. And the reason for that is, this is adding a 7th debuff when there are only 6 debuff slots, and Kefka has 6 debuffs of his own. And in the LD era, Kefka will be framing his debuffs, and even though Kefka will be framing his debuffs, you don't want to add another debuff to the mix, because this is just going to end up pushing off HP Silence. So don't give this to anyone. Don't give this to anyone you plan on playing with Kefka. And even if you don't plan on playing a character with Kefka, still I'd recommend not doing so, because there probably is a better E-Spear type for that character. Next up we have Vanille. This isn't a bad spear to give to Kefka per se. Adding spear to hit Dispel to his kit wouldn't be bad, but Kefka frames all his debuffs anyway, once he gets his LD. And this is such a good spear for Vayne. It's such a good spear for Arden, for Arciella. I wouldn't recommend it for Ultimecia, but it wouldn't be bad for her either. So, great spear, not the best thing you could give Kefka. Now, here's the thing. Tidus and Setzer basically have the same spear. They're largely the same. So I'm just going to group them both together. Still, don't give this to anyone you're playing with Kefka. Yeah, it's a debuff that Kefka's going to override anyway. Who cares? But the potential for overriding, for the potential to push off HP Silence if you're playing a character with framed debuffs is there. So again, think twice before you give this spear to someone. Next up is Ferris. Now, when you see critical poison all, when you see the all here, after the name of a debuff spear, that generally means that the debuff applied is an aura. And the debuff applied here is essentially a aura poison based on 30% of the enemy's initial brave. This is fantastic. Kefka already has a max brave sap that is 20% of his own max brave, and which is already better than what Sarah and Alphino have. But if you add this on top of it, enemies just can't gain brave. They just can't. They'll be stuck in break status all the time because they lose all the brave that they're gaining, which is fantastic. Next up we have Vincent. Again, the potential to push off Kefka's HP silence is there. Don't give this to anyone that you plan on playing with Kefka. If you're gonna give it to someone, I'd recommend... there's no one I'd recommend this to. Anyone that has an E-Spear slot either has an attack down that is better than this, or is going to get an attack down that's better than this. And if they don't have debuffs, there's a better spear you can give them. Next up is Seymour. Raises attack by 3%, 5 times. Raises attack by 3% every time you inflict a debuff, and this stacks 5 times. This is a good spear, but I wouldn't recommend giving this to Kefka, who... This is probably best left on Seymour, if Seymour is a character you're interested in. Because you should be giving Kefka his own spear, which is fantastic, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I can't recommend Seymour's spear to Kefka. But there are other debuffers that could make use of this spear, like Vanille. Thancred's spear is basically the same as Ferris's, except the requirement is weakness damage. Now, Kefka does have weakness damage in his kit, and there are Imperil Enchanters that you can pair Kefka up with. You can pair him up with not Arden, sorry. You can pair him up with Kuja, and you can pair him up with Sand. And they are Imperil Enchanters that work really well with Kefka. And Kefka's Havoc Wing, which is up constantly. You're always gonna have Havoc Wing up, because it's gonna be up after 2 uses of Kefka's skills, or after Kefka uses his one skill and 2 Brave or HP attacks. So this spear will be up most of the time. And it wouldn't be a bad spear to give Kefka, but again, I'd recommend Ferris' spear over that, unless you plan on comboing them both, because they do stack with each other, because they're not technically the same debuff. Weak Poison All and Full HP Critical Poison All are technically not the same thing. Next up, we have Orin. This spear is not useful for Kefka. Raises melee attack by 15%. Kefka doesn't do melee damage. And this spear is pretty good for Orin. I believe Jack has an E-Spear, and if he does, then this spear would be good for him. Other than that, I can't really think of any other characters other than Orin and Jack that would benefit from this spear. Arden can't activate it because he does not have debuffs of his own. And you can't give him debuffs of his own without an E-Spear. And he only has 1 E-Spear slot, which you should be using for Vanille's spear. Next up, we have Sarah's spear. This is not great. You should use this. This is a spear I know I said earlier in the video, don't just toss on spears, but this is a spear you don't care about. It's filler. You can toss this on whoever and not care. That said, if you're going to do it, you might as well just use something better. 10% to a single stat isn't great. 10% to 2 stats is great, which is what Yuffie does, and a couple of other characters do. Next up, we have, after inflicting a debuff from Irvine, raises range attack by 15% for 6 turns. This isn't good for Kefka. He does nothing but magic. This would be good for Noctis. In fact, I plan on giving this to Noctis in the future. Off the top of my head, there's not many characters other than Noctis and Irvine that I'd give this to. Next up, we have Questus. This is a spear I want to like, because it's giving party utility to a character, right? But 5% to a single stat's not great, It's 5% for 6 turns. If this was 10%, this would be a different story. This is 10% to the entire party. If it was that, this would be a great spear, and I would recommend. I could recommend putting this on Kefka. As it stands, I can't really recommend this to anyone other than maybe Questus herself. Next up is Fujin. The spear is also another really good one for Kefka, because it takes Kefka's 60% speed down to a 70% speed down. Because again, look at this. This attack long is an aura. So yeah. What did I say before on Ferris' spear? Critical poison all? Yes, well, usually when you see the all at the end, that means that it's applying to all the enemies as an aura. I needed to quick check on my terminology. Next up we have Kefka. Just give it to Kefka. This spear you should just give to Kefka. Just give it to him. No one else needs this spear. Just leave it on him. I do want to go back and talk about Fujin for a bit. Another reason why you want to give this spear to Kefka is if you're going to be pairing him up with Kuja, who's a great partner for Kefka during the Lufenia era. Kuja also gets a debuff. Kuja's Imperil, which is Imperil Holy, has minus 10% speed down. So when you combine Kefka's speed down with Fujin's spear and Kuja's Imperil, you're decreasing the enemy party speed by 80%. And with Kuja in the party, he has an aura that raises the party's speed by 40%. The enemies are going to struggle to get a turn when these elements are together. So even though I'm not giving Kefka Fujin's spear, I prefer Ferris' spear because to me that's more lore appropriate. This is a very strong combo that you should not overlook. Realm, don't give this to anyone. You're gonna risk pushing off HP Silence. Don't. Much like Laguna's, much like Vincent's and Setzer's and Titus's, don't give this to anyone you plan on playing with Kefka. And even if you do, think twice. Maybe give it to Gao, because if you're going to be playing Gao and Kefka together, one or more of Kefka's debuffs is going to be resisted if you're playing Kefka and Gao together. So in which case, yeah, that's fine. Next we have Fran. I don't think Max Brave Down is a particularly great debuff anyway. But, again, it'll conflict with Kefka. Don't use this on anyone you plan on playing with them. This is another interesting one. Comes from Pain. This is another aura. Raises party attack by 5% for 3 turns, and lowers enemy attack by 10% for 3 turns every time you inflict weakness damage, which Kefka will be doing a fair bit with his EX, and especially if you will be pairing him up with Kuja or Zand. This will raise Kefka's 80% attack down to a 90, and once Kefka gets his 7-star armor, that will raise the 90 to a 100% attack down, which is ridiculous. Kefka's already making enemies hit for 0s and 1s. Like, if you give him this, that's just unfair. And he's raising the party attack. This is a great spear for Kefka, but here's the thing. Pain, right now, is not a good character. When she gets her rework, she is not good. Her EX plus realization is not great, and she doesn't get a rework, and it's very difficult to tell someone, hey, this spear is great. You gotta max out a very underwhelming character to get it. So, no, I want to say give this to Kefka, but think about, is Pain worth it right now? Now, that said, every character will have their time to shine. There will be a day where Pain goes back to being great. I mean, when she came out, she usurped Kefka's role of being the strongest debuffer in the game. And there will be a time when she retakes her mantle. But for now, Kefka is firmly in first place as the strongest debuffer in the game, and will continue to be so up until his burst comes around, where he will then continue to be the best debuffer in the game. Next up, we have Emperor Spear. Again, 10% to a single stat's not great. You can do better than that. But if there's nothing else, you've used your better spears on other characters, and you don't have a better spear coming up anytime soon, yeah, you can throw this on a character. Cam's spear is, again, not something you want to give to someone that you'll be pairing with Kefka. Even though this is a debuff that Kefka will be overriding, the possibility of pushing off HP silence when you pair Kefka up with someone like Zand or Kuja is still there. Or not even Zand or Kuja. If you're pairing them up with Kurasame or Charlotta or Noctis, they'll be pushing HP silence off if you include this, and you aren't careful. So next we have Eld Nacho. This isn't a bad spear. 15% max brave up. I wouldn't give this to Kefka. I would recommend Yuffie's spear over this because it's raising 2 stats. But this isn't a bad one. Ami's another really interesting one, and one I can't recommend for Kefka, though it would be a decent addition to his kit, which is Brave Regen. After inflicting a debuff, grant the following effect for 3 turns. Raise party's members' Brave by 10% of their initial Brave at the start of their turn. I would not recommend this on Kefka, but I would recommend this on someone like Edward, who inflicts debuffs fairly often, and has Brave Regen, and raises party initial Brave, and Edward is a very, very strong partner for Kefka. So this isn't a bad spear to give to Edward. I can't recommend it on Kefka because there's so many other better spears to give Kefka. But on Edward, definitely. Kurasame, same problem as the previous spears, though this one is the least... Speed down is the least likely to push off HP silence. I still wouldn't recommend giving this to anyone. And last, but not least, we have Reno's spear. Moves all enemies' physical attack by 15% for 3 turns upon breaking a target. Kefka will be breaking fairly often. Kefka's Havoc Wing has guaranteed break now. It's not instant break, it's guaranteed break. Even if the attack misses, it's breaking. It doesn't have... If the target isn't broken, even if the attack misses, Kefka's Havoc Wing will break the target. Now, this is only for Now, I wouldn't give this to Kefka for several reasons. One, I wouldn't give this to Kefka because it's just to one attribute. I'd honestly just keep this on Reno. But if you're not going to give it to Reno, maybe Eldnarsh or X-Death would be good picks. Alright, and that was... Now we're done with the E-Spear review. Let's talk about Spear combination recommendations for Kefka. So my first recommendation is Kefka Yuffie Ferris. This takes advantage of Kefka's very powerful Max Brave stat from Sneering Clown, and gives Kefka boosts to the stats that Kefka cares most about, which is his attack and Max Brave. Artifact-wise, if you're going to go for this build, I would, again, recommend Attack 108, Max Brave 330. Though Attack 108, Power Destruction 2-star wouldn't be too bad. Next up, I would recommend Kefka Yuffie Fujin, which is, I believe, the Spirit loadout that Josepher will be going with. This lowers enemies' speed by 70%. You pair them up with Kuja. That's 80% speed down. and Kuja has a 40% speed up Aura, very powerful, enemies will, like, if you use this combination together, you will never have to worry about weird turn orders where the enemy's just constantly going ever again. Next up would be Yuffie, Eldnarsh, Ferris, or Thancred. And this build again takes advantage of Kefka's very powerful Max Brave saps by focusing more on the Max Brave aspect of Kefka's kit. And in this case, I would actually recommend going 330 Max Brave Power of Destruction 2-star, because in this build you want to go as much Max Brave as you can get. And again, if you're going to go Yuffie, Ferris, Thancred, same thing. You want as much Max Brave as you can get, so that the enemy will just keep getting their Brave sapped and drained, and they just won't be able to do anything. For someone that wants Kefka, who's satisfied where Kefka's Brave damage is at already, you can go Kefka Questus, which gives Kefka a bit more damage and then some more support. Or you could go Kefka Questus Pain, or you could go Kefka Fujin Pain, or Kefka Ferris Pain. These are some really powerful. Kefka Fujin Pain improves Kefka's debuff potential. Or you could go Fujin Ferris Pain, and this is pushing Kefka's debuffs as far as they will go. That's what that spear loadout is for. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I don't know when I'll do another spear guide or character spear loadout review. So and I don't have any plans of doing any quite soon, but if someone has an interesting character that they want to know spear loadouts for, I think the next one I know I will do for certain is Arden, because Arden has some interesting things you can do with him. But until next time, if you've enjoyed this and you want more videos of this nature, subscribe and let me know who else you want in the comments. The next series of videos that I'll be doing are on Kefka team party compositions, as well as just Kefka runs throughout Chaos, and Kefka solos. I don't know how many of them I'll do, but I do plan on doing a lot. So, if any of that interests you, please stick around, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Later.